All right, so before we start, hang on a second. All right, wonderful. So here we go. We get to start with the fun stuff, guys. This is hilarious. This is a tweet from Crazio Cortez. And she says, this is a technique of the GOP to take dry humor and sarcasm and literally fact check it. Like the world ending in 12 years thing. You'd have to have the social intelligence of a sea sponge to think it's literal. But the GOP is basically Dwight from The Office, so who knows? All right, hold on a second. Excuse me. I like Dwight, first of all, from The Office. But bear with me, folks. I want to go ahead and I want to play the video real quick as well. What she said. This is funny because, basically she's, oh, come on, you couldn't have possibly taken me serious, right? Could we?
And I think that the part of it that is generational is that millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it?
All right, let's back this up a little bit and I'll turn the mic up a little more.
It's going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate after us are looking up and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is.
All right, I don't know about you guys, but that doesn't sound like someone who's being humorous. She first made this claim to pitch her Green New Deal pitch for her, policy and everything like that, and all this scaremongering that she did. And then she goes out here on Martin Luther King Day, or a Martin Luther King type celebration, I believe, and, basically just rambles on for like 3 minutes about nothing, talking about 3,000 people died last year, and she wasn't really clear about what the heck she was talking about. But more than once has she talked about this 12-year thing. I mean, remember, guys, she was live on social media, I believe it was Twitter, eating popcorn and drinking wine and, telling people, yeah, the world's going to end in 12 years if we don't get serious about climate change. So I haven't had Asshole of the Week in a while, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wins Asshole of the Week. For sure. It's Monday, I know, it just started, but nobody tops this one. Backpedaling her statements about to even suggest that this Green New Deal was going to improve climate change conditions or fight them off. That's the first lie. The second lie is that the world was ending in 12 years if we didn't do something drastic to address climate change. That's lie number 2. And now, lie number 3 comes on Mother's Day, saying that she was just using dry humor and sarcasm. And your interview online on Twitter, you told an individual who asked about, do we really have 12 years for climate change to end the world? And your response was, yes, if we don't do something now about taking on climate change and cutting back emissions, we will be facing a catastrophic situation in 12 years. And now that people have pretty much made fun of you left and right, even your own party is starting to shy away from you now. So you can't come out here. Look, your following may be dumb enough to follow this tweet that you made the other night. But I promise you, those in the middle and those on the right are not stupid. All right? You're not just going to sweep it under the rug like it never happened, just like they do with, Hillary Clinton's email scandal That's been swept under the rug. Nothing to see here. She just scrubbed out 30,000 emails. Nothing happened. Same thing here. Oh, I was just joking. If you believe that, then you should be a something. Basically is what she's saying. This woman is crazy. And that's another thing too. She's also had 2 SEC complaints about campaigning and campaign money being funneled illegally and moved around illegally, and yet nothing's happened about that. It's sad people like this are even allowed to be in office. Again, I'd like to know how the heck she got elected. I feel like that something happened and there was an error in the computer system. They put her name on the ballot somehow. I just don't understand how this woman got elected. I mean, she's such a spineless person. She's one of the worst examples of a Democrat in Congress. She can't even back up what she says. She backs down easily when faced with harsh criticism. Republican or Democrat, I don't want people like that that are going to flip and flop. Especially ones who are in charge of making up laws for the country. Especially ones like this, where this woman here has no idea what she's talking about, but yet she wants to convince the world and the United States that her policy is going to combat climate change. Yet it's going to cost a lot of money from American taxpayers, but hey, don't worry about that. Who cares about what it's going to take? If we don't do it, we're going to die. That's what AOC is saying. And now she's like, oh, I was just kidding. We're not going to die. I just want to take your tax money. Thanks for coming. That's basically what she's doing right now. Whatever. We've seen this song and dance before from the Democrats. It's really not that surprising. It's funny to me. This was a humorous event here. Thank you, Anthony Watts, for pointing this out. I'm sure other people have as well. But again, just funny to see her backpedaling from her 12-year into the world. And I love the artwork here that was used for her. It's on What's Up With That when you go there, so you'll see that as well. Here is another article from What's Up With That. Does NASA's study confirm global warming? This kind of touches back on I covered this before, where we showed the different temperatures from each satellite. And the RSS is a lead for the GIS temp and the ECMWF as well. And then you've got AIRS. And this study is trying to pass off that the AIRS, according to the AIRS study, that we are seeing warming because of what the AIRS satellite has reported. Now, I'm bringing this back up because I want people to remember that if there was also another article about the AIRS satellite. Now, mind you, it's the highest reading on this list. Before I get into that, it says here, which climate data set is the right one? Interesting, the CRUT4 data set, which is managed by a team in the United Kingdom, uses most of the same temperature data from the GIS temp uses from NOAA, Global Historic Climate Network. Among the major data sets, CRUT4 shows the lowest temperature increase, one that's nearly identical to the UAH. All right, so you think that they've got something here. There's a baseline down here, right? Critics of the NASA's GIS temp have long said its higher temperature trend is due to scientists applying their own special sauce at the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies, where Schmidt had the head of the climate division. But what is even more suspect is the fact that while the first time Schmidt had dared to compare his overheated GIS temp data set to a satellite data set, he chose the AIRS data, which only has 15 years worth of data, whereas RSS and UAH have 30 years of data. Okay. Aside from that, we already know that the AIRS satellite only gets 100% accurate readings when there is zero clouds over the area it's trying to measure the temperature. Let me repeat that. The only time that the air satellite system reports warming, it reports temperatures on 100% accuracy is when there is zero cloud coverage over the area. In fact, there's a paper that says it cannot consistently read temperatures during cloud coverage. So how is NASA going to pick the one satellite that gives the most unreliable information? And there's, you can go either way. The bottom line is, if people out there want to use the RSS and the UAH, I think that's the closest thing to do and split the difference. Honestly, that's where I'm at with this. But when I hear that the AIRS satellite system does not measure through cloud coverage, and this study is based from that satellite reading, and they're saying, well, that's how we're confirming the warming. It's from that satellite data. Because look at it, 0.24. Never mind the fact that it only predicts or reports accurately when there's 0% cloud coverage. Now, we all know that we've talked about this on this channel several times. There is way more cloud coverage on this planet than there ever has been, probably, in a long, long time. I mean, not since the last minimum, the minimum before that. I'm talking hundreds of years ago. I mean, the skies, to me, when I look at the skies today, guys, I remember the paintings that you see online, the images that people painted back in the 1600s and the 1700s. That's what I see. So it's just amazing to me that NASA would cling to the one data set that had the most unreliable measurements. And that was a satellite that could not get an accurate reading through cloud coverage. But yet these other satellites were good enough. And when I look at the difference between the UAH and the AIRS, that's staggering. That's almost a 0.06 difference. All right, and that's a lot in this temperature world, okay? That's a lot. So I say if you pick between RSS and the UAH, you're probably on a safe bet to follow that information right there in between. Just to be on the safe side. Honestly, I wouldn't trust any device that does not accurately read temperatures unless it's clear skied. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. Why would you trust that information, especially when you know cloud coverage is on the rise? I don't know. Rant over, but I definitely wanted to point that out tonight. I saw that on What's Up With That. Thank you once again, guys. It's kind of like going over. I went over it before a couple weeks ago. All right, so from one of my favorite AM stations in the whole wide world, 700 WLW News in Cincinnati, Ohio. Carbon dioxide levels hit new high at 415 parts per million, highest in human history. And I wanted to read a little bit of this. This is the first time in human history our planet's atmosphere has had more than 415 parts per million CO2. Not just in recorded history, not just since the invention of agriculture 10,000 years, since before modern humans existed millions years ago. Okay. Carbon dioxide levels have not been in the atmosphere this high for more than 800,000 years. All right. Follow along. Continuing here, scientists say carbon dioxide is the primary driver for global climate change. Boo, disinfo. Which can trap solar radiation in the atmosphere. Oh, is that how it works? CO2 is now trapping the solar radiation in the atmosphere. Gotcha. Burning fossil fuels such as coal, oil, gas release CO2, methane, and other types of greenhouse gases, which are responsible for the planet's warming. We don't know a planet like this, says one individual here. Look at the CO2 just going up, 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 up. Okay, so it is safe to say the current rate increase holds steady for another 2 decades. Global CO2 will be well past 450 parts per million in the 2038. Yes, it will. Absolutely. Because by then we are going to have a crap load of volcanoes going off. And between that time, yes, you're right. Absolutely. A VEI 7, I believe is what John Casey said, or higher, between 2017 and 2047. Somewhere in that area we could see a major catastrophe event from an earthquake and volcanoes. Now, what's the point of all this, you say? Well, hang on a second. And I'll show you real quick. Because the record situation of the global anomaly, the temperature, I should say, from Mr. Dr. Roy Spencer, who does this work. I want to show you the warming that we've experienced. Very quickly here. He's been busy on his website. I'm trying to get to that here while I've got the other screen on here. Let's go back to the mix. All right, here we go. So let's talk about this for a minute. Let's zoom this in a little bit so I can move it over. All right, so let's get the handy dandy arrow. Let's just focus on, okay, so I'll show you guys the years right down here at the bottom. Let me zoom this in a little bit more. All right, so here's the years right down here at the bottom, guys. First of all, we can see that April 2019 is at 0.44. So here is 19, 18, 17, 16. We're going to focus right here in the 16, okay? That is where we have our peak, okay? Right here. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because we've seen, obviously, a decline in the temperatures. Let me turn this off for a minute. So we've seen a decline in temperatures from the UAH. All right, here's where we are right now. So this is where we were, and right here at the top where you're looking at this arrow is 402 parts per million on the CO2 levels. Right now, you just heard from 700 WLW's mainstream disinfo organization, I should say. We are at the highest record levels of CO2 in our atmosphere in the last 800,000 years. But yet our temperature globally is lower than what it was in 2016. And we are 13 parts per million higher today than we were 3 years ago when the temperature was warmer, about 0.44 degrees Celsius warmer than what it is today. Okay, so that's one thing I want to mention, is that the CO2 is the highest of ever recorded in 800,000 years. They're going back on ice cores, obviously. So let's back that up a little bit. So basically, this article is also admitting that this planet has seen CO2 levels in its atmosphere like this before mankind. Do you know where I'm going with this, folks? Do you know where I'm going with this? Okay, so if we've had this high of CO2 in the atmosphere before mankind, according to this article that I just read here on 700 WLW. Let's read it again. Let's see. Since before modern humans' existence, even millions of years ago, not just they're saying that this is the first time in human history our planet's atmosphere has had more than 415 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. Since before millions of years ago. But at least 800,000 years we haven't seen it this high. So we didn't have an industrial age. We didn't have humans driving cars or airplanes or burning coal to stay warm in the winter. Nope. I doubt we barely had much of a population back then in the dark ages, the caveman days. Highly doubt they lived past the age of 23 on a normal. So, again, contradicting itself, and this is how stupid some of these news organizations are. They don't understand what they're talking about. Oh, this is the highest ever, and it's all because modern humans are causing temperatures to rise, but this happened last 800,000 years ago where the CO2 is really high. But there was no humans on the planet to cause the CO2 to go up, so help me out here. Again, these people are not going to be able to keep their facts straight when it comes to this kind of science. They don't understand science, because if they did, they wouldn't even write this article. You are my favorite radio station of all time, AM-wise, guys, but this is stupid. And whoever is writing this stuff should be fired. Does not represent the radio station. All right. So this is kind of a red flag situation here, guys. I'm not one that likes to mix news from outside of weather or GSM. But this is kind of important. Last week I watched the stock market crash, and it gained some on Friday, about 64 points. It lost over 600, I believe, somewhere in that area. Today, we are talking about trade wars. The Dow ends at 618 points down today. Why? The escalation of trade tensions between the U.S. and the China has wiped more than $1 trillion away from the global market. So, tit for tat tariffs, $60 billion on all U.S. goods, claims China. All right, you know what? Forget you and your ad blocker. I really didn't need this story. I just wanted to bring up a point. Now that we know that we have this big bad trade war going on right now, could it be possible that President Trump just wants people to buy American-made and grow American-made? Is it possible that Trump is teaching these nations to take care of its own people in case of a natural disaster? Is it possible to buy local? And the problem with that theory is that a lot of these bigger chains out there, I won't name any names, I don't want any copyrights or any more censorship on my channel, but there's a lot of big name grocery markets out there that's driven out the local farm markets. So we've got a lot of work to do here to wind it back. And I've said this before, and a couple of weeks ago, our government needs to do a better job at protecting our farmers, reimbursing them for situations like what we're going through right now. All right, so let's keep this in mind. We got $1 trillion wiped away from the global market today. Check this Google headline alert that Mari got the other day. Okay? This was food crisis. Here's the headlines. Faced with economic and food shortage crisis in Cuba, North Korea is facing food crisis and maximum pressure by U.S. military, of course. UN body concern over North Korea's food crisis. Cuba begins widespread rationing due to food shortages. Palestinian food aid threatened by a seriously funding crisis. More Cuba blames Trump for economic crisis for the food. Now, this is what they're going to do. They're going to blame Trump, but I got to point to all this. Venezuela fell from the richest country in South America to now a starving food crisis country as well. Yemen war, citizens struggle to buy food in Yemen. Do you see where I'm going with this, people? The list is long. And so some of the media, instead of talking about the real cause of the food crisis, which is worldwide crop failure happening at almost every level right now in the agriculture department. So you want to tack on a trade war on top of what the climate is doing to our agriculture business. Either which way you look at it, folks, this is a dangerous time. And I really wanted to talk about like the stress of finally figuring out ways to get it across people about how we need to really take what we say on this channel seriously, and others alike. Adapt 2030, Ice Age Farmer, those guys are always talking about food crises and food security. And then we look at the stock market today, and we see this picture here being thrown around everywhere. Stock market has fallen beneath 25,000. It's tumbling, folks. So food prices are going up because of this trade war, and you've got flooding all over the Midwest, some of the northern plains, and now in the far south. Drenching rains happening now in the northeast. That's going to delay planting. Soil temperatures here are nowhere where they need to be for crops to even flourish or even begin. It's time we start taking this serious, guys. Not just for the weather side of this, but you got to pay attention to what's going on in this stuff right here too. When the headlines are talking about food crises almost everywhere in the world, when are we going to start feeling the effects too when it comes to prices? And if they keep doing this trade war stuff, So we've got the climate to fight with food, and now we've got our world governments to fight when it comes to food prices. This can't be more in your face, glaringly important. To learn how to grow, to learn how to fish, to learn how to hunt, to learn how to be self-sustainable. I know Mari and I talk about we're going to start doing this, and we're going to try. We really are, folks. We really need to get on the ball of start showing prepping videos, maybe even just create a channel that's for prepping only of the grand solar minimum. I don't know. We'll have to figure something out, because to me, and I don't mean to raise alarm, tomorrow the markets, you know how it is, they correct themselves within 2 or 3 days when we see this kind of a loss. I hope that's what's happening tomorrow. But when you combine this right here and the food crisis that's going on around the world, it doesn't feel like things are going to be an easy ride between now and the end of this minimum period that we're going through right now. We'll be right back, folks.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform, buy a t-shirt, or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.